Good morning. One thing that I do know, and I have to say, I have to preface that by saying there's a lot of things, most things I don't know. But one thing I do know is that each and every one of us, the time will come when we take that first step towards spiritual unfolding. The unfolding of the truth that we've always deep down been aware of. We've known this truth. We've lived this truth from time to time. And part of us longs to re-experience, rediscover this haven of selflessness, this blending, this incorporation to all that there is. As I like to say, to remember what we've forgotten. So there's a time when each of us will take that first step. And today, even though I've been into this channel, this YouTube channel, even though I've been sharing close to a year, I haven't really addressed beginners. People are curious how and when it's appropriate to begin with that first step. The first step that sets you on a path, a never-ending path, which you will experience climbing mountains, reaching peaks, only to glimpse, to discover that there's more and more peaks. You'll go downhill as necessary into the valleys, the flat plateaus sometimes, steep valleys that have a sharp decline that leads immediately to a steep ascension. And I'd like to say that probably when we reach those plateaus where progress is harder to measure, therein lies some of my favorite times, when time seems to be extended or stretched so that you have ample time for leisurely contemplation, for learning how to relax those shoulders that may carry much of your stress. As for me, my stress is either in my stomach or on my shoulders, and most times simultaneously. So somehow this, just let it go, and I can feel the corresponding reaction in the gut. It too relaxes in its own way and time. So if you find yourself curious, if you can hear the echoes of the infinite, the song of the universe, or at some level you become aware that it's there, this is the time that I'm addressing today. Those of you who are at this point, perhaps you've had a teacher who simply points the way and lives as an example of what we all can be when we're integrated, when we find the true expression of ourselves in that infinite oneness. So, point the way and being a living example. Now, if you haven't found or you haven't sought for a teacher, you can read. You can read what other teachers have recorded in words all the time, with the caveat that words, just as a teacher and his teachings pointing the way, books and scriptures and words of wisdom from saints of the past do much the same, point the way. So for me, personally, I had many years of studying the Tao Te Ching, for one book that I really love, dabbling with the I Ching, reading Paramahamsa Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi was one of the first. Christmas Humphreys, if you're looking for more of a Western context, Christmas Humphreys, particularly his work Walk On, which is emblematic, symptomatic for my own personal journey. Take that next step. Now I mentioned either a teacher or sutras or songs that move you spiritually would lead you to the precipice. And the precipice is there before you take your first step, your first real step on your journey to awareness, to discover that you've always been aware. It's not a new condition. It's a journey, so to speak, to nowhere, or if you take that word nowhere, now here. So the preliminary steps are what lead you to the precipice, or however you want to envision it. This is how I envision, because it's about a leap of faith. You have to continue the metaphor that I'm comfortable with, that suits my imaginary eye, is jumping off the cliff, plunging into the abyss. A little bit terrifying when all is said and done, but if you rest secured in the banishment of fear, and particularly the most powerful fear for most of us is fear of death. When you start to see that there's more to life than meets the eye, that the possibility exists, that it's a never-ending process, then the fear of death gradually will lose its hold. And it's at this point that you begin to contemplate or begin to be prepared to take that leap. If you live in fear, you will die in fear. If you relegate fear to the realm of Maya and illusion, where belongs. When you fully grasp that fear is baseless. Fear for the future. Future's not here. Fears from the past might be a tougher nut to crack. But at some point, along these preliminary steps, this preparation for your leap of faith is to come to terms with the past, to come to terms with the present, to forgive yourself for shortcomings, perceived shortcomings. Then you're ready to peek over the abyss, peek into the abyss, and take the leap. Now, I don't know if you're like a cat and you will land on your feet. I remember just doing a belly flop, discovering myself flat on the ground. But the ground was a giving nature. It just gently supported me. And then I needed to first stand up. I remember looking back, looking upwards to the cliff that I leaped from. And it's in the clouds, way beyond where I could see, nestled in the clouds, shrouded in fog. But I felt rejuvenated. I felt as though it was a new beginning, that I had been reborn, that I was prepared to do whatever was necessary to continue this journey that I had so fearlessly began with that leap of faith. And lo and behold, there was a round stone step. And this is the first step. The first step among an infinite number of steps. But it wasn't a time of despair, thinking that, oh my God, this is a never-ending journey. Instead, I embraced that and found comfort in the realization that I was embarking on a many lives long journey. And instead of being intimidated or awed, I just experienced being on that first step. I totally enjoyed the moment. And initially, that one step was all that I could see. And after I savored it, after I experienced it with my 5 bodily senses and began to introduce those senses beyond the bodily confines, another kind of opening the eyes. Opening the eyes in the light body, the spiritual form. And another step just magically appeared after I was complete with the first one. And for a long time, this process continued, that step by step. And initially, I remember walking on basically flat ground. And I got to the point where, again, through faith, I would take that step even though the stepping stone had not manifested itself yet. But before my foot reached the place where the stone was supposed to be, there it was. And as I built up, as I learned that it was appropriate to take the next step sooner than maybe I had taken the previous step. And gradually I noticed a gentle incline. And slowly but surely the path became evident, became obvious. I could see longer and longer distance of those stepping stones yet to come. And there'd be periods of time. I spent a lot of time initially walking up steep paths, so steep that my staff, a staff magically appeared in my hand to assist me in the sometimes arduous journey. And this staff became part of this allegorical journey. I remember Journey to the East. The same author, Hermann Hesse, that wrote Siddhartha, the early story of the Buddha. But his journey to the East was all about this mythical that had become, from the realms of seeming magic, had become as real as anything else in my life and world. So again, to go back a little bit, some kind of initial urge, some kind of curiosity, born of maybe you know not what, but beginning to believe that there must be more to life. Maybe the material things of life have begun to ring hollow. Maybe you've reached a stage where accumulation of wealth is no longer a be-all and end-all as it is in the world of plain survival. Maybe it's a questioning of your temperament. Are you easily angered? Are you easily worn out? Do you get tired easily? The condition of your physical body. You start listening to your body. I was a vegetarian for more than 30 years without ever pausing to listen to my body. I was so sure, and that's dangerous. Surety is an enemy. I was so sure that this was the best thing for me that everyone, to reach their end goal, had to be a vegetarian, if not a vegan. I always held on to my dairy products, so I never really lived a vegan lifestyle. And if truth be known, I didn't really like vegetables all that much. And my body, especially raw vegetables, uncooked vegetables, just seemed to reject them, not do well. Constant acid reflux, lots of burping. And then I started eating white meats, chicken in particular, and went on essentially a low carbohydrate, high protein diet. And I lost, over a course of the last few years, I lost 20 plus kilos. I started actively exercising, particularly with bike rides and long walks and hiking, because I had physical energy that I didn't have before. I started looking better. Losing weight will go a long ways. I started noticing that if I didn't necessarily look younger, I certainly felt younger, rejuvenated. So this is important. Listen to your body, particularly as you begin to embark on this journey with no end. We take metaphorical steps, but we can remain right where we are. If pilgrimages help you, I certainly don't want to discourage you if you want to go to. I had always aspired to go to 4 things of Buddha's: his birth, his enlightenment place, his teaching areas, and then his passing. And it's in the cosmos. It's up to whatever impels me. Maybe I felt compelled to do this, but now I've switched. I'm not compelled to do anything. I've surrendered to the force of impelling. So, we'll see. But perhaps pilgrimages will help you to get prepared for your initial steps. Certainly, reading sutras, reading Hermann Hesse or other spiritual writers, even some self-help gurus. Dr. Wayne Dyer has meant a lot to me. Stuart White is another one. But I'd be remiss to mention the important role of meditation. This is a practice that, if it doesn't come spontaneously, that maybe you have to promote it, maybe you have to practice it, maybe you have to make it a habit until it can become a hobby, until it becomes part of your natural being. I would say that meditation is perhaps the most helpful in your preparation to begin this journey. And meditation, don't have preconceived notions. If you want to follow a tradition or an order and you find solace or you find support in a group, by all means, practice the way they practice. But for others of us, I spent a long time in the Rinzai Zen tradition only to be like the Buddha. In folklore, they said the Buddha gave up his spiritual pursuit. He gave up all sense of accomplishment from getting from point A to point B. And the word they always used is gave up. And I couldn't imagine a man who went to such austere practices, asceticism, eating a thimbleful of rice a day, drinking a couple sips of tea, extreme commitment to his austerities, only to say, I give up, and then he was enlightened. I never liked that. It didn't set well. It just didn't seem to be a type of personality that had spent from 16 years of age to a man in his early 30s that would just say, oh well, I give up. And then it started hitting me like a ton of bricks. Epiphany. And what fit so much better, at least with my interpretation of what happened was him, is letting it go. Letting it go is infinitely different than giving up. Letting it go. Assigning it to the arena of intrinsically unknown, with the slim hope that parts of this overwhelming unknowability, bits and pieces, would come your way through time, through serendipity. And resting assured that not knowing was more than okay. Not knowing is the condition of life as we experience it in this physical form. So that's what I mean by letting it go. Most things in our life are out of our control. There's nothing we can do about it other than the simple practice of what I call cleaning your own back porch. The one thing that we even have a modicum of hopes for accomplishment is that we can begin to influence. I don't want to say control, that's too strong a word, but manifest our own personal behavior, our own personal thinking and feeling to clean it up. And this is the cleaning the back porch. If each of us cleaned our back porch, meaning worked on the only project that we really know we have, is ourselves. So part of the first step is to listen. 2 ears, 1 mouth, as the pundits always remind us. To listen externally, but more importantly at this stage, to listen internally. What is your heart telling you? Sometimes you really have to listen carefully because it's not much more than a murmur. But as you pay attention to it, somehow it begins to get amplified to the point that it can even overwhelm the mind. And this is what I really consider quieting the mind. 2 things: overwhelming it with another energy, with another dependency on what your heart tells you instead of what your head tells you. Overwhelming it, learning to put it to task, put it to work, helping you evaluate among the infinite variety of knowledge to relegate what is not so from what might possibly be so. Then your heart can take over. It's not overwhelmed by, the load has been reduced, the stimuli have been limited. It gives your heart a chance to sort it out. And the next category is, does your heart say that this goes in the file of the intrinsically unknowable? So be it. Most of what passes through my process, what my mind separates, is ultimately relegated to the realms of the intrinsically unknowable. But that doesn't mean that there aren't things that we can know. We can start to grapple with the concepts of infinity. We can start to feel secure from fears, safe from fears as, firstly, unnecessary energy and work. And ultimately, we'll find that all fears that we used to entertain are baseless, without a base. Now you are prepared for the precipice. Now you begin to follow the direction. If you don't have a teacher who points the way, if you find some guidance through all the information that's available, all the words of wisdom, or if you just stumble through your own, like going through a jungle, until you part the vines and you see the precipice. And this is when you do your best to enter a state of grace, an acceptance, a trust in the unknown. As you boldly walk for some, baby steps for others, even crawling to peek over the precipice with no visible bottom or floor. Then you close your eyes, open your heart, and leap.